Welcome to Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman, a leading expert in professional coaching, clinical hypnosis, and energy clearing. Lois is an award-winning author of Chronicles of Hope. She has decades of experience in advanced hypnosis techniques, has conducted highly effective success coaching programs that have helped clients discover ways to achieve success, empower themselves, their families, as well as holistic practitioners to expand their practices. Get ready to be empowered with your host, Lois Herman.
Good morning and welcome to Inspiring Hope. I am your host, Lois Herman, and I hope to inspire you with positive messages, and we celebrate everyday people who are making a difference in our world. When we focus our thoughts and energies on what we love to do, we create powerful shifts that cause us to be more positive and peaceful. As we lift our energy, we empower everyone around us. If we each do what we can to make small shifts in awareness, from kindness to healthy habits to simple happiness, we create ripples of hope. Join us as catalysts for positive change for our families, our communities, and our world at large. I hope you are inspired by today's show. And today, I want to talk about a few very specific things, but I wanted to first start with a comment. Someone asked me yesterday about giving something up for Lent, because we are in the season of Lent for some people. And I thought, what if we gave up negative thought? What if we gave up watching negative shows, negative people, anything negative? Pay attention in your mind to the thoughts that are negative and shift them to be more positive. The only thing that could happen after 30 days is that you are more positive, that you're feeling more positive, that life in general is more positive. So, hey, instead of giving up chocolate, enjoy that. Give up negativity. So happy first day of March. Today is a new beginning. We're shifting into coming into spring. And I want to ask you, yesterday was leap day. So what did you do with that extra day you had in a year? What did you do with that extra time? Actually, extra day in 4 years? So for me, along with just my household chores, I filled my time with catching up on writing. This is kind of my new passion. I got my newsletter out. Those of you who are not getting my newsletter, I send out an Inspiring Hope newsletter, and that's called you can just click on, go to my website, loisherman.com, and click on my Insights newsletter. I send it out the first of every month, and it usually comes with positive thoughts. This one was on truth, honesty, and integrity. If we can come from that place, we can shift ourselves, our lives, and the world around us. So please take a look at that. And then I worked on that. I also finished up descriptions on my new YouTube channel. I am so excited to finally have this go live. Again, you can subscribe at my website, loisherman.com. If we get 100 subscribers, we'll have our own full-on YouTube channel. But right now, you have to click into it. So anyway, that was fun. And so all of these radio shows are now uploaded to the YouTube channel. So if you've missed a show, go to my YouTube channel and you can watch all of them. And then the other thing that I did, this is my passion. I worked on book two of the Chronicles of Hope. In the wintertime is when I like to write, because in the summer you're going to find me in the gardens on the weekend. So I have, I don't consider myself a writer, but because my background, my education and experience is in medical sciences, physics, biology, anatomy, pathophysiology. I've written technical manuals, processes and procedures, that sort of stuff coming from a manager. But I've never had training in English literature, or I've never really been one to read novels. I've read a lot of medical journals and self-help stuff, especially with my hypnosis background. But I've never really considered myself a writer until a series of events caused me to now have that as my main passion. Oh, and I just want to say one other very special thing I did. We celebrated dinner together with a gentleman who is retiring, and that was wonderful. So very much good luck to you, Mike, on your new journey. So when I want to tell you a story about my first sojourn into writing. When I was first hired by Hewlett-Packard, I was hired to develop education materials. And I was an expert in the field of diagnostic imaging, and specifically in this specific agenda in vascular ultrasound. And I was instructed to write something, an instructional piece for our customers. So I wrote how to do a carotid ultrasound exam. And I was asked to hand it over to 2 writers. So I did. And when it came, I was pretty proud of what I'd written. However, when it came back, they were both bleeding and red ink, and I was angry. How dare they? I'm the expert here. My ego was way too big for myself. And then after a while, when I chilled out and I looked at the paper, their edits were almost identical. So then I cried. Oh my gosh, I'll never be able to do this. Working with these 2 amazing, gifted writers, they were actually retired English teachers. So they knew how to phrase things, how to put the punctuation, how to create the sequence. I learned so much working with them for 10 years that when I went out on my own in my own personal hypnosis business, and I was advised by my mentor, you need to write. My first action was that of panic. Oh my gosh, I don't have an editor. I now have come to rely on a series of editors. I have several editors. My newsletter that was put out went through 2 different editors. Anything that I write on my website, I have somebody else's eyes look at it. That is not my gift. So, for instance, you might want to change the oil in your car, but wouldn't you rather take it to a mechanic and have them do it? You might want to pull a tooth in your head, or wouldn't you rather go to a dentist who has the skills to do it? So editors have unique skills. They can take a look at your stream of consciousness writing and say, here's what I think you should do. So I highly, highly respect editors. And that leads into, I was called to write the book Spirits of Amoskeag about 5 years ago. And I had an editor that I was working with, and she was wonderful, but I didn't know anything about publishing a book. I just wrote it. I had a printer that I was working with at the time. He had someone that was a formatter. He created the book for me called Spirits of Amoskeag. I did this as a commitment, a promise to a series of spirits. We won't talk so much about that book today, but I helped 300 spirits into the light, and I promised them that I would tell their story. So this was their story. So I just printed 200 books. Those books sold like hotcakes. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, now what do I do? And just by the way, you are listening to WSMN 1590, and I am Lois Herman, the host of Inspiring Hope. And today we're talking about publishing your books, your works, and be it books, be it music, whatever. We are talking about how to publish. So I ended up publishing this, but then when I knew I had to create more copies and realizing that I published them with a printer at a premium, I was advised to reach out to this amazing woman who would become my friend over years, Deidre Randall. And she doesn't usually take on a book that's already published, but she felt sorry for me, and she took a look at the book and gave me a lot of suggestions about how I really needed to redo the book. She suggested that I had pictures of more of the local, the Amoskeag children, and not worldwide children. So it was interesting. She helped me to really repurpose. So then we ended up creating the second version. So there's really 2 different versions of that book out there, and Deidre's is really impressive. So then when I was called to do the Chronicles of Hope, this time I knew I was going to reach out to Deidre right up front. And I'd already pretty much skeletoned the book when I reached out to her. But even then, when I reached out to Deidre as a publisher, there were several things I needed to pay attention to. So based on that, I would like to invite my dear friend and publisher, Deidre Randall, to tell us about her, to tell us her story. So Deidre, welcome to the show, and tell me a little bit about your background.
Hi, Lois. Thank you so much for having me on the show. You are definitely one of the most inspiring people I know, and one of a wonderful author because of the way that you do approach it, and you do take things very seriously, and you are very open. You know, you mentioned having an ego, and I never see that in you. That must have withered away or something, because you're very open to working with editors, and I think that's really helpful. So I became a publisher in 1998. So the company that I own and operate today is called Peter E. Randall Publisher, and Peter is my father. He started the company back in 1970, and I grew up watching him publish, but I didn't know that I would be doing that myself. I worked with children and families. I had a big focus on sort of the social work side of things, helping people that needed help to improve their education primarily, but oftentimes they had financial challenges that were impacting that goal. So I've always been interested in literacy. I've always been interested in reading, and working in the early childhood realm, I really got excited about books and in a new way, because I could see the power of reading for children, and that's really one of the simplest ways to help a child, by the way, learn to read, is read to them. So I went to work with Peter in 98. I finished a master's degree in business and moved out of the work I had done previously, and then I became the owner of the company in 2008. So now it's all mine. And
that's wonderful.
It's exciting. It's fun. I love what I do.
And for those of you who've tuned in, you're listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman and my guest, Deidre Randall, the owner of Peter E. Randall Publisher, and you are listening to WSMN 1590. We're here every Sunday morning. So, Deirdre, tell us a little bit about you. What else you do? I know you are a musician yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And you've had your own radio show. So you come with a kind of an interesting background.
Well, I think it's really important to nurture yourself and to keep yourself, I guess, for lack of a better word, fueled by good works and good activities and good people. And I find that as much as I'm very lucky to have a job I love, I really enjoy publishing. I love teaching people about publishing, and I love working with authors and meet the most interesting people in my work. And that part is probably different for me than for some people whose jobs may be more of a way to earn a living, but it might not include any of their passions. I'm able to have some wonderful experiences in my day job, so to speak, but I'm also a songwriter and a poet. And for many years, I'm in a second marriage with a second family now, but when I was a single mom, I really embraced the songwriting and poetry.
Here with my guest, Deidre Randall, who is the owner of Peter E. Randall Publisher, and she is the publisher of two, excuse me, and now almost 3 of my books. Mm-hmm. And Deidre, talk to us about publishing books, because I've learned so much from you and the whole structure of the process of creating books. Mm-hmm. And when I pick up a book from someone else and I start reading through it, it's almost disconcerting when you encounter edits that should have been made, or where there's not a nice flow to it, and it really lessens the credibility of the author. I have learned to value, like I said, my editors, but I also value your feedback, your advice, the structure of how to produce a book. Mm. So can you tell us a little bit more about, if somebody were to want to publish a book, what would you recommend?
Well, the thing about publishing is there are certain tasks that need to be performed if you want to end up with a quality book. And it doesn't matter if you're being published by Simon & Schuster or you're doing something with a smaller company. Our company's been in business a long time, and we've published hundreds of books, but we are what's known as a small press, an independent press. Editing, you mentioned it at the opening of the show. Editing is crucial. And I've had more people come to me and say, well, I've had it edited. I've had, my high school English teacher read it, and my spouse writes a lot of things for their job, and so we've had it edited. And we'll open the text up and take a look. And editing is for books is based on Chicago Manual of Style. And so it's very simple. It's sort of a list of rules to follow. So
Right.
we'll look at that and I'll say, well, here are the rules. Your commas are not in the right place, and boy, shouldn't be capitalized, even though you want to capitalize it for emphasis. That doesn't really follow the rules. So some of it is very, very straightforward in terms of editing. Design is very important. You mentioned you were working with a printer and they had someone who could do formatting. As soon as you hear the word formatting, you're probably thinking, okay, this is someone who's doing a basic task, nice and simple, but they may not be somebody who's skilled in understanding how book design invites a reader to a page and makes the reading experience rich for them and makes it such that, well, with good book design, you don't notice it. You just think, what an easy experience, I'm enjoying reading this book. If the book design isn't done well, you know that right away, because you're saying, boy, it's the text is cramped on the page, or it's too small, or it's an odd choice of font that isn't working for me. So book design is important to have a professional. And then, of course, there are so many options for printing nowadays, and luckily that's true. Digital printing is generally for smaller quantities. You started out with 200 books when you first did your first book.
Right.
That would have been a great, sort of a test run. And 200 books would be done digitally. It's a little more expensive per book. So then the other option is offset printing. And knowing this and understanding a little bit about how printing works can help you to understand how many books you need. How often do you want to have to go back to the printer and get more books? So there's some of these basic things that you just need to understand that are important pieces. Proofreading is another one. Proofreading is something that most people say, well, I've looked at it, and then I'll say, you can't be the proofreader anymore.
Exactly.
You need a fresh set of eyes to look at your book and
Right.
catch those typos.
I know that when I worked with the first book 1 of Chronicles, and now with book 2, excuse me, I have a review team that represents people from various different walks of life that I will send a chapter to. They will read it. Some of them will say, this is great. Others will say, I don't understand this, which helps me then to be more clear as they read it. They get back to me, and then I address their questions and their concerns. So having a variety of different people read your work is important to making sure that you've addressed the potential for confusion or question among your ultimate readers. And I know that based on my amazing editorial team and your expertise, the Chronicles of Hope got this 5-star rating, and I would not have known anything about this except per your recommendation. We created what are called ARCs, and I want you to talk about that in a minute too. Sure. But because this book was sent off to a reviewer, it was like having an English professor review the book. They graded the cover, they graded the characters, they graded the content, they graded everything. And we got a 5-star rating. You were shocked. I mean, you were surprised, but I was shocked, and I was delighted and that's because of the people on my team. Had I started with what my first stream of consciousness was, it would have never been approved like that. So tell us a little bit about the process, because we're looking at Chronicles of Hope Book 2 coming out in August, but I have to have it to you in a couple of months.
Hopefully later this month. Maybe,
yes, exactly, by end of March.
Well, I think there's two things that you're doing, Lois, that a lot of authors could take a nod from this. You have people reading your text for the content. So what's the information in the book? What's the message? And then you've also brought in people to help you with the editorial side. And then when they come to us, we're doing a copy edit, which is a very basic, straightforward task, as I mentioned, based on Chicago Manual of Style. So it's a little bit more mechanical in a way, although a good copy editor will question things like sequencing, or they might say, "Oh, you were doing something last night, and now you're talking about last night again, and you're doing something else," and then you realize, "Oh, I meant 2 nights ago." Or, you can correct those things once somebody points them out to you. But it is important to have readers in both camps: people who understand your subject, and people who don't understand your subject at all, but just who like to read and like to give information back about how well they're able to access the content, because the heart of publishing really is taking people's content and making it available in a form that fits their audience.
Exactly.
And for you, we've gone to printed books, ebooks, and an audiobook. And so people can access your information in so many different ways now that it makes it much easier for your message to spread far and wide. And you have put together a great team, but you're at the heart of it, Lois, and you understand the need to get the content out in the right form.
Absolutely. And I'm excited because those of you that are on Facebook, we now have these little disc drives that have the audiobook on them. Yes. We've been asked, some people don't want to download, Audible. So we're actually addressing that. I think this comes from my corporate background in a marketing world where you have to pay attention to your customer requests. Mm-hmm. So people are saying, we need this or we need this, so we are addressing that. We've created websites. We're doing a lot of different things to get these messages out there. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that you advised us to do when we were creating a book was to create what are called ARCs, advanced reader copies. Now, can you tell us a little bit about those?
Right. Well, in the book world, it takes longer to set up a book for marketing than it does to actually produce the book. We can usually produce a book in about 6 months from the point we get the manuscript until we have the finished books and we're unpacking from the box. But with marketing, you need to plan even farther ahead. Mm. So we had opportunities that we wanted to make available to you, and one of those is getting advance reviews, early reviews before your book even comes out, and that's one of the ways you've got the 5-star rating. Mm-hmm. But ARCs are sort of the uncorrected proof. The old term used to be galleys. You used to hear people talk about galleys, and now it's called ARCs, advanced reader copies. And you print up a couple hundred of those if you have a large list and you want to get a book out as far and wide as you can. There are so many book reviewers out there nowadays. So when you're looking for good book reviewers, you want to try to find some kind of a source that you feel is reputable. And New Hampshire Writers Project is the nonprofit writers support organization in New Hampshire, so they're a good one to check with. They're going to steer you right. But there are other resources like the Literary Marketplace, which is a great publication. There's now an online version of that. Mm-hmm. There's online versions of lots of things. So instead of pouring through your Chicago Manual of Style, you can now get a monthly subscription to their website, and you can put all your questions in there. Where does the comma go? When do I capitalize? How do I know if I spell out a number or use the numeral?
See, my editors, they do that. They're amazing. They're truly amazing.
They do.
And one of the things that the ARC did for me, depending upon your audience, my audience were hypnotists and metaphysical-minded people. Yep. So I was able to send the ARC to a handful of people, peers that I respected, and I sent the ARCs to them to get some feedback. What do you think about it? So what was wonderful is several of these advanced reader copies that were in the hands of some esteemed peers. These peers got back to me with some really nice comments that we ended up using for marketing purposes, and ended up being some of their comments ended up being on the back of the book. That's right. So that's where the advanced reader copy is crucial to getting the message out there pre-release.
Right. And it's sort of, it professionalizes what you're doing. So when you're in the book world and you're trying to get attention, you want to compare favorably to books that are coming from all kinds of publishers. And, large publishers use ARCs. They send them out early. They send them out 6 months ahead because they've planned their publication out several years ahead. Working with our company, we don't generally do things that far in advance because we don't always have authors who have come to us early enough to do that. But as long as you get the ARCs out a few months ahead of your publication date, preferably 4 months is a minimum, most reviewers will be happy to take a look and let you know what they're thinking. And one thing to keep in mind, too, is that it's important to have your own reviewers. You don't have to just cold send them to anyone. So they don't I think the review world is changing because there are so many places that aren't reviewing anymore. For instance, most newspapers will not review books anymore. They might do a feature story, but they're not going to review your book. So you need to look for other options like people who do podcasts, radio shows, magazines are important, but even groups that have a newsletter that communicates with an audience that they have that you think would fit your book. That would be a good place to reach out and say, would you be willing to look at an advance copy and give me some feedback?
Exactly. And addressing that point, I'm working with a PR person, and she's discovered that some of these book review companies get up to hundreds of books a week.
Thousands.
It could be.
Thousands.
And so it's so hard. Why would they want to read your book? So
Right.
It was really hard to find companies that would review, which was why the peer review was so important for me personally. So if you've got a specific style of book, or if you've got something, a type of, an area of expertise that you want to share, make sure that you ask some of your peers to take a look and be willing to give you some feedback. And I so appreciated all of that, because it helped me. Then once the art comes in and you get some feedback, now you have one last chance to go in and make some subtle changes. Not a lot, but I was able to then make some additional changes based on the feedback that came from these advanced review copies. And I just want to mention that you are listening to WSMN 1590. This is Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman, and I'm speaking with Deidre Randall of Randall, P-E-R, Peter E. Randall Publishing Company. And I want to ask you, Deidre, why did I choose you versus going to one of these more well-known publishers out there? What makes you different?
Okay, that's a great question, Lois, and people ask that often. I would say one of the biggest pieces is that we do not take your rights. So you retain the rights to your material when you work with us. And I've published some very well-known authors. One of the most recent, Marianne Esposito, who is the host of Ciao Italia on PBS. She had been published by large publishers for many years. She happens to live in New Hampshire, not too far from where the offices are for our company. And her entertainment lawyer actually connected her with us. I had done a book for another one of his clients. And we sat down together, and she said, I don't have to give you the rights. And I said, no. And she said, I'm interested. The other piece is that we do not take any of the sales income. So sales income is something that people say, well, that's only helpful to me if I sell the books. So in addition to that, we provide marketing support. And I have connected with so many authors over the years who've come to me and said, I was not given any marketing support. I published my first book, and my publisher never talked to me about sending things out for reviews, how to have a book launch, how to write a press release and get that out, how to work with a distribution company, and how to do any marketing that is correct for the book industry. And that's one of the pieces that we're very strong with. We support people in their marketing efforts, and that's why people often come to me. They want to retain the rights. They want control over their content and their schedule, and those things we can offer. So.
And that is so true. And I am so grateful to you, because you've like held my hand through this process. And I too, I knew that this work is sacred work, and I needed to maintain and protect the copyright on that. The book is actually trademarked now. It's a series. The book 2 is coming out soon. Book 3 will be next year. So it is definitely a trademarked series, and I did not want to give this out to anybody else because I needed to protect the content in this book. So that was one of the main reasons. But the other was you have been, I can text you, I can pick up the phone and talk to you. Some of these other publishers, you send them a book, they're so impersonal. You really don't actually talk to a person. Right. Deirdre, you have been there to hold my hand through this whole process. So now that we're working on book 2, we already know what we made a few delay issues last time. We had a couple of challenges, but now we're learning and we're honing the process. So we think that we're doing a whole lot better with book 2 and excited about it. So for instance, you did encourage us to do a book launch party. We did a pre-release book launch last year, which was wonderful. So we're planning a similar one this year, and we'll be able to do pre-sales. But this time we have the distribution channel in place. There's so many moving parts that go behind the scenes that people are completely, it's mind-boggling what and I could just pick up the phone and say, Deidre, what do I need to do with this? And you have proactively helped us plan and strategize our marketing plan.
Right. I really love helping authors to prepare their books and to position the book for a good release. And I have obviously been doing this work now for about 20 years, as I started in 98, a little over 20 years now, I guess. But having been, one of the things you asked about were some of the other things I did in my life, and having been a performing songwriter and produced CDs and released those, I was familiar with how to work with marketing and timing to make a successful sale of a product.
Right.
And some of those same techniques I pulled over to work with books, but books are very specific. And even if you market some other kind of item, say you are a marketing person for a technology company, it's just a different timeline. And if you want to get an article in a magazine, you have to contact them months ahead of when the book comes out. So calling them 6 weeks ahead, they're going to say, well, we like to cover books the month they come out, and that edition is already at the printer. Mm-hmm. So we can't cover you in that way. And then hopefully they'll work with you to do something else.
Yes.
And just list you as the author of your book. Because once you've done a book, that just adds to your professional foundation and your presentation and your platform. And that was the thing that I think really clinched the deal for us. I really loved what you were doing. I knew that you had real stories to tell that were amazing. And I've had an interest in metaphysical topics, and that was something our company hadn't done a lot of until I took it over. And since then, we've done a few books, yours being, I would say, the most prominent, the most out there in the world. And I'm just excited to be a part of this and be sharing the hopeful messages that you received. And it's, for anybody who hasn't yet had a chance to dig into the volume 1 of Chronicles of Hope, there's amazing information in there. And some of what's the most wonderful and impactful for me and our book designer, who happened to be somebody else who'd also read a lot of metaphysical literature, Grace.
Yes.
Grace and I both said, a lot of this information we've seen in other books, but which legitimizes it. But also there were additional pieces of information that we hadn't seen. And that was the other piece of it. So it's just, it's exciting, and it's a real honor to be able to publish these books.
Thank you. And I'm excited to be bringing book 2, which is a whole different, shall we say, energy. Book 1, we're talking with these ancient ones who are more like professors. They're historians. They're somewhat removed. Yeah. But in book 2, we're talking to one of the ancient gods. We're talking to a prophet. We're talking to a misunderstood archangel. We're talking to Mother Gaia. So these are energies, beings that are very much involved with humanity on a day-to-day basis. Yes. So these chapters are much more involved. They're more emotional, more they touch your heart very deeply. So this book is very rich and very emotional. And they are all very concerned with what's going on in our world today. And this is why these messages must get out, which is also why I decided to have this show to spotlight these amazing people that I know that are helping others. And Deidre, you help so many people to get their works, not just books, but like you said, musicians getting their works out. You did a radio show for many years, so you are an inspiring person to me because of the work that you're doing. And what we need to do is we need to celebrate the people that we know who are doing good things, who are coming from a place of positivity and hope. Because if we can all collectively get together, we can shift this world to come from a place of honesty, truth, and integrity. And when we can do that, and when we can come from a place of at one where we're all one and really embrace each other for their truths, then we can shift this planet to be more positive. So thank you for all the work that you are doing to help me and to help others. So you have some other interesting stories, some other fascinating authors that you've helped.
I do. And, I guess I just want to follow up with what you just said and say that that's the only way that things are going to change, is if we all shift our internal energy and our individual energy, and that provides the support for what needs to happen in the world. But I've had so many interesting authors come to me over the years. Another one that I'll share a little bit about a gentleman who had written a book about how to train and finish the Boston Marathon. Not how to win it, but just how to get through it and finish it and achieve that goal. And this particular author had done a lot of training. He'd worked with people from the high school age all the way through seniors. And he'd trained hundreds and hundreds of people over a 30-year career. And he was a Nike shoe tester. And he had the 10 Commandments of Boston and a homemade recipe for Gatorade. But when he brought his book to me, it quite frankly was rough. It was very rough. And I had a hard time getting the information out of the writing because the writing was not very strong. This particular gentleman was a physical therapist, and he knew his information backwards and forwards, and he wanted to get it into book form where he could help other people. And so I paired him with a developmental editor, which did a deeper level of work on the project. And he was, again, no ego, very open to the process, wanted this to happen. So we worked together, and he ended up coming up with just the book he wanted and achieved his goal and was very pleased. Even the cover, the idea of what he wanted on the cover were the things that you carry with you on the race. Well, one of those things is a roll of toilet paper. I said, we're going to have toilet paper on your cover? Wait a minute here. So he sent me some pictures that he had taken of the items, and I said, how about if you bring me the items? And we set up a professional photo shoot, and that caused the items to be photographed in a way that it was honest and real, what he said you needed, but we made it look a little more pleasant to appearance.
Sure.
So that was an exciting one. And then I've had a lot of authors come to me with children's books. It seems like everybody has contemplated doing a children's book, and many of them write in verse. And let me tell you, you're not. If you've read any Dr. Seuss, you think, well, anyone can write these verses. He makes up words and everything. He was a master.
Yes.
He was a master, and it is very difficult.
And you know, I want to say that I noticed that a couple of special people are listening today, and one of them is my daughter, and she was raised on Dr. Seuss. She could probably recite some of this by root, because I love Dr. Seuss. So both of my children were exposed to a lot of his prose, or his what would you call it?
Well, his poetry.
His verse,
poetry,
yes.
Yeah. He is wonderful, and in fact, we always have used that. And my husband we tell a little story about he had forgotten the name of the Dr. Seuss book that he most liked, and he said, "Oh, where's that book? You know, the one about jumping on Daddy." And I said, "You mean Hop on Pop?" And he said, "Oh yeah, Hop on Pop." But I think what's important to know about writing for children is you need to write in a way that captures what you're sharing, and it doesn't have to be a verse. Writing in verse is very, very challenging, and I've had several authors who came to me and they had done a pretty good job, but still, when I dug into their poems, I rewrite the poem with them, and they'd say, boy, this is working better. It's so hard not to get those forced rhymes in there. And when you've read a poem to yourself over and over and over, and you think, well, I know how to read this, it works, then what I would suggest you do is give it to somebody and have them read the poem to a child, someone who's never read the poem before. And I did that with one of my authors, and I said, have the poem be read by your babysitter. And she said, she stumbled over it. She couldn't get the rhymes right. I don't know what was wrong. And I said, you're hearing what I'm hearing. You've taught yourself to read the poem.
Exactly.
But that isn't really the best way for the wording to work. So, and I've had pretty well-known authors be willing to let that change be made. So,
and that's I want to address that specifically with what you're calling developmental editors that I'm working with now. As I'm working on book 2, my 2 editors, we are reading every chapter out loud. And I think it was because of the audio book. Yeah. When we read book 1 for the audio book, there were some things that didn't sound quite right. So as we're going through and creating book 2, we're reading it for both the written and the audio version. So every single chapter we are reading out loud, and they are helping me with, let's rephrase this. What if we say it this way? So we're using my content, but they're helping me to structure it so that the reader understands it the way that I'm wanting to portray it.
Right.
And I want to just mention to people that you are listening to WSMN 1590. This is Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman. We're here every Sunday morning. You can find out more about everything that I offer at my website, loisherman.com. And then, of course, we're talking about Chronicles of Hope a lot. It has its own website, chroniclesofhope.net. And I would welcome you, please, to subscribe to my new YouTube channel where you can watch all of these shows on the YouTube channel. So I'm speaking today with Deidre Randall, a dear friend, and she is my publisher. And I've asked her to come on and help other people understand how to get their works published. So what other tips, ideas, suggestions do you have? I know that book 2 is going to be coming out, and you think about that's a long way away, August. But we've got a lot of deadlines to meet before we get out there.
We do.
So, yes.
We do. And in some projects take years.
Really?
It's hard to know how long you're going to need until you sit down and start doing the work in terms of the writing. With the publishing, once we know the length of your book, I can pretty much tell how long we'll need to do each step in terms of the copy editing, the design and layout, the proofreading, if you are a nonfiction topic and you need an index, how long the index will take, and then printing and binding is it's a mechanical process. It's manufacturing. So we know exactly how long that will take based on whether or not you have a hardcover or a softcover book, if you're full color or black and white, if you're printing 200 books or 10,000 books.
You also have to set up the whole distribution channel.
Right.
That was a lot of work, too.
Right.
I am now working with a new distributor. The books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible. But all of those take time, care, and feeding. It's not just as simple as, we're just going to do this. No. That all takes effort.
Well, we're lucky to have a wonderful, small, independent distributor, Pathway Book Service. They're in Keene, New Hampshire, and we had a distributor for many years. We were connected to Dartmouth's University Press of New England, and then about almost 2 years ago now, they ceased operation, and so we were no longer able to be distributed by them after a number of years working with them. So I found Pathway Book Service, and they've also been in business quite a long time, 50 years, I think, and they're very easy to work with. They can help authors who have all kinds of requirements. They can sell Lois's ebook and her printed book, her audiobook, and I think it's really important to have professional support for your distribution. Otherwise, you're just printing 100 books and taking them around to a few shops.
Exactly.
And that could be fine. That can be a fine, special, limited edition. I did a book like that once for a gentleman who was a gifted illustrator and storyteller, happened to have a neurological illness that had slowly rendered him bedridden. And his family wanted to do his book, so we did it, but they didn't print so many because it was just going to be something small to get his story out in the world.
Right. So one of the things about this distributor, they're very much like you. I can pick up the phone. I can shoot them an email. They're right there for me. Yeah. So, for instance, at the end of April, I'm going to be presenting at the Heartland Hypnosis Conference, and I love this conference because they actually have a whole metaphysical track. So I also have this amazing team in Missouri. They have me lined up to speak at between 2 to 4 additional venues while I'm out there, which I'm very excited about. And, of course, I need to send books to them. Yeah. All I had to do was send an email to my distributor. Can you please send some books to them? Boom, done. Yeah. And it's amazing. So they have the ability to track your books and to get them out there. When I first was doing the Spirits of Amoskeag, if somebody ordered a book on my website, it was about take the book to the post office, put it in an envelope, and send it. With the distributor, they take care of all of that.
Yes, and at a professional price.
Absolutely.
So you're not being charged a huge amount of money for something because it's what they do every day.
Exactly.
And they can also connect the book to all of the supply lines, like the Ingram.
Right.
They're the largest wholesaler in the country. They also have a connection with a UK distributor, so that you can get your books into Europe. And it's a great tool to have and a great option for you. So, if you want to professionalize and take it to a level of, I want to sell books to people I don't know.
Exactly.
That's what you need when you need a distributor.
I know a lot of people who have created books on CreateSpace,
Yeah.
on Amazon, which is just, you create it and you put it out there, and that's fine. But there's nobody there to advise you, to hold your hand, to help you to promote it. And that's where someone like Deidre Randall, this is who we're speaking with today on WSMN 1590. I'm your host, Lois Herman, and we're speaking with Deidre Randall, who is the publisher. And you say that you're a small press publisher.
Yes.
But to me, you're my handholder. You're my advisor. If I have a question, or if Christine has a question, we're right there, and you have been incredibly helpful.
Well, you've been wonderful to work with, because you take the suggestions and you use those to guide your process. And
right.
One of the things that I always find interesting is when folks come in and they want to work on a book with us, and we give them our best recommendations. Every so often we'll have someone who'll say, well, I'm not going to do it that way. And my job is always to say, okay, I just want to make sure you know the option. If you know the option and you're choosing to go a different way, that's okay with me. I just don't want you to go out there and not know that there was another way.
Right. And this harks back to my learning and trusting with your skills. That is not my skill. I need to trust my team, and I have an amazing team of people who are helping me. And it's like being a project manager. So you have to trust the different people with the different skill sets. If you advise me to do something, who am I to question it? Because you have that level of expertise. So that I'm following your lead, your suggestions in order to promote. And you've given me, advice that it's going to take a while to get out there. Be patient, instead of saying, why isn't the book selling? But we're still following through. We're taking it step by step. And in the process, it will ultimately get out there.
It will. It will. And giving it the time. Remember when you first called me and you said, we've got to get this out there as fast as possible. It's important for the world.
Yes.
And I said, well, when would you like to have it out? And I think you said, well, how about, we'd like it out in about 6 weeks. And I said, we're going to need to reframe that and look at about 6 months.
Yes.
And I think we did it faster. We did it a little faster for you, because there was an urgency to get the information out there.
Right.
But taking the time to do all those steps and allowing those steps to happen professionally, the better product at the end is going to carry the message in a better way.
And that's exactly right. So we had to take a step back and say, we want to get it out there, but it's got to be quality. We don't want to just throw something out there and hope it sticks. We took the time, and with my developmental editors, we really redesigned the first version of the Chronicles Book 1. And now we are approaching it from a whole different perspective, and it's coming along beautifully. So by the time we get it to you, it should be fairly arc ready, we feel, but because we've had your coaching, we've had this background. And I encourage anybody who is wanting to write a book to reach out to you. So Deidre, how can people contact you if they're interested in your publishing expertise and skills?
Right. Well, we do have a website, perpublisher.com, and that's PER like Peter E. Randall. So people can send a message to us that way. We have a Facebook page, the Peter E. Randall Publisher Facebook page. You can certainly contact us that way. And on our website, we have a phone number, 603-431-5667. Just pick up the phone and call me. I'm happy to discuss things. And usually I can do, a brief phone call with not a lot of advance warning. And then if it's something you'd like to come to Portsmouth and meet with us, I would say about half of my authors live within a distance where they can meet with us in person, and others, they're just too far away.
And yet I can see on Facebook that there's people on here. Lynn's from Tennessee.
Yeah.
There's Will. He's from Florida.
Yeah.
We've got some people from around the country listening in. So thank you for being here. And so you don't have to be there in person.
No.
Because you can do Zoom sessions or phone sessions. suggestions. Yeah.
Or occasionally I'll have an author who says, I'm going to fly in once to meet with you because I'd like to do that.
Right.
And we're always open to that too. But we don't need to be in person together in a room to publish your book.
And that brings to mind that when the final edits of the book were ready, I was on my way, if I'm not mistaken, I was on my way to Hawaii.
Yeah.
I was going for my honeymoon this past spring. Now, of course, we've been married several years, so my husband said, you got to make sure the marriage sticks before you invest in the honeymoon. This is my wise husband. So anyway, but you were able to send that to me, even though I was in San Francisco on the way to Hawaii.
That's right.
So we don't have to be right here in Portsmouth, as well as, as much as I love Portsmouth. Yeah. You can communicate with Deidre separately.
That's right.
From
That's
a distance.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So any other last minute suggestions you would have to people who have they've got an idea that they want to create? My suggestion would be to reach out to Deidre first before you start the creative process, because she's going to give you some suggestions that will help you to not have to undo what you've done.
Right. Well, if you want to write a book, start writing. And keep writing. Have a writers group to help you and work with you. And again, New Hampshire Writers Project, they offer writers meetups around the state on a regular basis. So I like that group because it is a nonprofit group, and its sole mission is to support writers. And I believe I'm going to be speaking at their spring conference. They have a 360 conference every year in the Manchester area. But there's also going to be an Exeter Lit Fest coming up in early April in Exeter, New Hampshire, and I'll be speaking at that on a panel about how to publish. So, but definitely, if you want to write a book, write.
And make sure you have a team. You've got the editors that can take your written word, your stream of consciousness, polish it up, and make it readable. Be able to help you get your words out to other people. Yes. So, Deidre, do you have a favorite quote that you want to share?
Oh, well, we talked about this during our phone call earlier this week, and it's the same quote I always share. All you need is love.
Oh, the Beatles.
Yes.
They were an inspiration, were they not?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I believe that in my business. I believe that in my family and my life. And I think that, it sounds a little simplistic, but it's really not.
Yes.
Love is deep and rich and complex.
Yes.
And it's so important.
And you are listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman. Thank you for being here. I hope you join us next Sunday morning when we'll have another amazing guest on. Thank you, Deidre. Thank you, listeners. Have a wonderful week. Meanwhile, look up, stay positive, and be the light in someone's day.